We're all good.
We're all good.
Scared.
He always brings you along for these tricky things.
Yeah. Just get in.
Well, hey YouTube, this is John, and I'm joined by Jason. As we promised, we're
Hello.
going to do another video, a third video, in our installment. So the first video was him driving for the first time, and then the second video I drove and we talked, and he was able to provide some commentary without the stress of having to drive on top of that. And now for the third video, Jason's back in the driver's seat. And we're joined by our friend Charlie here, who is also an EV enthusiast, and we're going to give full self-driving a test this morning, see how it does. So let's get started. All right, so we're going to be making a left turn. This is a scenario that we had in a previous video called Chuck's left turn, or the unprotected left turn. So the car is looking for traffic from the left and from the right, and it is actually pretty clear.
That was
Interesting that it
That was the
picked.
scariest left corner.
So that was an interesting choice.
I don't know why it took like the furthest rightmost lane.
Yep.
You know, it was just interesting.
It's not afraid to get after it either.
No.
Well, and I've got it set in chill mode, by the way. So for those of you that watch the series, one of the comments I made before in the second video was that the car drives pretty aggressively in corners. And this time around, what we did was John and I set up a profile for me instead of me driving under John's profile. And I set it to chill mode because I felt like it was really aggressive in the corners, much more aggressive than I would personally drive.
So we're going to take a right turn. We'll let the car do this. It's going to ask for you to interact just a little bit. There you go. Good job. And I'm going to show the visualization here on the screen, so we'll make that full screen. Coming up to the yield sign, right turn. No traffic. Everything went well there. Nice job, Tesla. So here on the screen we see visualization. As I mentioned before, blue means that a car could potentially be in your path. So we saw that semi coming into he was encroaching into this road as if he was going to enter the road. And the car didn't know that, so it painted it blue just to say there's a potential that truck could pull in front of us.
I'm trying to do a better job this time around of engaging the car so it doesn't kick me out of full self-driving. So I'm trying to find just the right mix of applying pressure to the steering wheel without disengaging it. I had that problem a lot on the very first drive.
That's actually very common with first-time drivers. Like when I was learning how to do Autopilot before I had full self-driving, the car would want it to interact, and my tendency was to overpull and always to disengage it. So that's not uncommon. I think most people struggle with that until you get that feel for it. So we're going to continue our drive here to the downtown area. You actually just disengaged from self-driving. Hold it a little hard. Let's wait for the wheel. There you go. Go ahead and re-engage. Perfect.
I wasn't happy with the angle it was taking in that corner, especially with an oncoming car. And it was a little slippery right there, a little snow covered. So I probably did just get a little anxious on the wheel.
All good. All good. So we're going to continue on our route here on Half Moon Beach, and then we'll end up at Phoenix Park or the Pablo Center for the first leg of the drive. The drive today is using, again, full self-driving beta version 10.69.3.1. We're anticipating the release of FSD Beta 11 here in a few weeks for the holiday update, and that should bring some improvements to how the car drives. But I think that overall it's been doing pretty well. What's your impression back there, Charlie?
That left corner out of my neighborhood was interesting. After that, I'm impressed with the slippery roads because there's some slush on the road, and it seems to be handling it, and it's appropriately slowing a bit. I appreciate what Jason did there when those cars were coming at us, but it feels like it's maybe just a slightly more aggressive than I would be with the conditions of the road, but not bad.
Yep. And that's how I felt driving the first time for sure. It just felt more aggressive than I felt comfortable with. Even in times where it wasn't technically doing anything wrong, but I just wouldn't drive that aggressive.
So one thing it does do is it has traction control. So like if I take it to a slippery parking lot and attempt to put it into a spin, it'll stop that. What happened here? Just lost our camera. Try that again.
Is it picking up the spin? It picks up that pedestrian. That's good.
Good. So we're going to continue straight through here.
John, remind me why it's yellow on the screen for our mapping right there.
That's showing that there's a slow moving traffic.
Okay, it's traffic.
Yeah, exactly. If it was red, it would be like, almost dead stop or very difficult. So it actually didn't choose this route by default. We had to pick it as an alternate route to get down here because we wanted to drive this specific route with the streets.
You really wanted to do that turn out of your neighborhood.
Yeah, the left turn, exactly.
That turn on my left, that's a tough turn no matter what.
Yep.
So it's being pretty aggressive here in terms of its follow distance.
It is, right? Yeah.
What do we have it set at? I'm just going to check on the wheel
Sure.
here. It's out at 7 car lengths, so that's interesting that it came right up this close.
Do you think that the sensors are coated with the weather? I mean, it's kind of drizzly and grimy out there.
You use a camera-based system, and the forward-facing camera is above the mirror here, so it should be pretty clear.
So it's inside the car.
It is, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was getting ready to tap the brakes on that one because it was closer than. Again, if it were actually slippery.
Yep. Let's let it go through its pace here, and then it's projecting straight, and then it's going to make a right turn up here at the next intersection. Right onto Barstow. Nicely done.
Turn signal's automatic, John?
Turn signal's automatic,
That's cool. Okay.
Sometimes it comes on when you wouldn't expect it to, and sometimes it doesn't come on when you would, like for lane changes is a big one where I've noticed the car will change between 2 lanes that are side by side and not use a turn signal, or change the lane to get into the turn lane for navigation and not signal that as well.
It'll be a little delayed. Right.
Yep.
Sometimes.
So overall, the car is doing a pretty good job navigating this, I would say.
Yeah, I
It's
think
hard
so
to
too.
see the lines on the road. It's a little slick.
We'll make a right-hand turn here and arrive at the first stop on our destination. So nice job with the 4-way stop. The car detected when it was its turn to continue. And it'll round this corner. We've got pedestrian right there. And then it'll just kind of stop right here.
Got exciting right at that last turn there.
Yeah, not knowing exactly where it wanted to go after that. So that's the end of that route.
One thing I'll say, being this is the second time driving now, you mentioned this before, John, when we were out the first time, is that after about a day, you got comfortable with engaging with the car and just knowing, and I can tell you that for the second time doing it, it's a huge difference to just, okay, well, you're back in it again, kind of starting to get that feel for, when to touch the wheel or when to apply pressure, noticing when this was flashing blue, because I didn't notice that before. That very first drive, it's one of the things I talked about on my podcast, is I couldn't see that at all in my vision. Where are we headed now, John?
We are going to go to the Eau Claire Supercharger, which is down by the mall.
No.
So I selected this as the final leg of our destination because I wanted to get to the mall area where we've got a lot of traffic.
Fantastic. And if we all know anything, it's that driving around by the mall a couple of weeks before Christmas is the perfect time to find a lot of traffic.
Good call.
Yeah. So car is showing the pedestrian here. It's got the red light depicted on the screen. Made the stop appropriately. And I'll be honest, I mean, even I wasn't paying attention to that light. I know you are because you're driving, but the car stopped when I didn't expect it to. So it is getting in the right lane. It's going to cross over this bike lane just a little bit, but that's okay. It is programmed to shift over bike lanes as needed for route navigation, as long as they're clear. It makes its turn. And earlier when we were parked, you mentioned, Jason, that the car sounded like the engine was running. You heard some fan noise.
Yeah.
So in the wintertime, actually, that's the heating and cooling system, the heat pump. And we have the heat pump on right now because I did select the charger, the Eau Claire Supercharger as our destination. So it's actually preconditioning the battery, warming it up for fast charge. So I'm hearing it right now run quite high.
I was wondering when it was going to make that lane change. That's pretty good timing, actually.
It was. You got in there well in advance.
Yep. I was, You know, I didn't, because the last time we turned right here and we were in the left lane, they moved over really late. So this was a pretty good timing, I thought.
Yeah. Nice. The cars did a great job through the downtown area.
Yeah, that was a good one.
So one thing that I wanted to talk about with you guys, because you're both pilots and I'm a pilot, and we fly airplanes that have autopilot,
Right.
is some of the differences between Tesla's autopilot or full self-driving navigation and what an airplane autopilot does. And so I'll kind of start out with my thoughts. You guys can add in as you have thoughts about that. So both autopilots kind of do the same thing. They are responsible for controlling the direction of the vehicle. So if the vehicle needs to bear to the left or turn left, they'll control servos that steer the car or steer the airplane using ailerons to go to the left or right. In an airplane, we also have three-dimensional, so you also have altitude, right? So altitude changes vertically. But beyond that, there are a lot of differences, I think, between the two types of autopilots. The primary one being the autopilot in this car, or full self-driving beta in this car, is intended to navigate us from point to point, but also to see and avoid obstacles, which we find on the ground, we don't see in the air. You know, for instance, would be like other cars, pedestrians, navigation signals like stoplights, stop signs. The car has to, you know, stop for those, whereas an airplane wouldn't do that. So it has kind of this anti-collision component to it that, interestingly, you don't find in an airplane. Like an airplane autopilot will collide with another airplane.
It'll tell you about it.
It'll tell you that there's traffic.
That it's there. Yeah.
Yep. But it won't actually avoid that type of accident from happening.
It definitely, the setting up of the autopilot in airplanes is a little bit different. It's much more manual, perhaps, to figure out the different points and things and navigate through them. This is such a great interface, and then the dynamicness to keep you out of trouble in a car situation versus an airplane. Airplane, it's relieving a ton of workload for allow you to do other things while flying. This, though, I feel you're still pretty still.
You're task
saturated in here. You're Jason's not reading a book right now.
No.
You know, or adjusting the radio or things like that. So now you read a book in an airplane, but you know, different tasks that you would be looking at charts and things. And Jason's definitely paying attention to what's going on around him. In an airplane, you can kind of check out a little bit on autopilot.
So this is a tricky area right here.
Look in front of us too. There's cars.
Yep. This is a notoriously kind of dangerous intersection right here because of this Starbucks on the corner.
Yep.
But people will come off that merge and then just zip right across or pull out. So there's a lot of, and this will get interesting here because we need to move over.
There's a car next
Yeah, let's let
it
run the course here. Just see what happens. It would come to a complete stop if it had to, if there's traffic in the left lane. But actually, we see on the turn signal there's plenty of spacing.
Yep. And that was good. I mean, it waited for that one to go, signaled and merged. And then I'm going to give him a little more boost here, just so.
Yep. Yeah, the speed zones here change kind of slow to what the traffic progresses, so definitely increasing. It's fine for flow. Yeah, so that's a good point about workload. With autopilot in an airplane, it takes off workload, actually flies the plane for you. Although there isn't a lot happening around the plane when the autopilot's working because you're one vehicle out in a big space.
Right,
versus
here we have a lot around you, so this you definitely have to be paying attention.
We typically don't use an autopilot around the busy spots, you know, approaches, airports, and things. You can use it to get basically to there, but you're much more not using it in the situations where everything's busy.
Absolutely, critical phases of flight.
Critical phases of flight. Thank you.
Yep.
And this handles critical phases of driving pretty well.
It does.
Yeah, that little area we just went through is definitely a tricky area, and I thought it did great through that.
Very sophisticated.
Yeah, so we've got just a little bit of a freeway-ish feel here on the drive before we get to the exit for the mall. There's going to be a lane change that comes up here that I mentioned in every video that I have, where it's going to have to turn right and then immediately make lane changes over from that right to get out of the turning
spot.
Yep. And it's going to be extra challenged today because of all the traffic going into the mall.
It's so nice that you take us Christmas shopping though, John. Thank you.
Right.
We'll have to get you
Yeah, he said anything we want at Shields. So,
It-
you know.
Anything that fits in the stocking.
Yeah.
gift cards are nice, man.
Yeah, they do. That's a good call. Gift cards are usually excluded from those specials.
Oh, darn it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so got quite a little bit of traffic up here. Lots of stoplights.
Yeah.
Lots of stoplights.
Yeah, so this gets tricky up here for sure.
This does feel a little less natural than me driving or you driving. You know, person driving, this is slow down a little bit, maybe
Yep.
make a lane change. The car tends to want to wait just a little longer
Mm-hmm.
than I'm used to, and that's fine in normal conditions. But when the roads are slippery, it can definitely be be a concern.
Yeah, and that comes back to the whole thing of, again, our intuition as human drivers, particularly human drivers with experience in these areas, right? So we know this area, when it's slippery, is particularly treacherous, where the car might not know that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or areas where you have an on-ramp that, if it's snowy, is going to get slippery. Oh, sorry, buddy.
That's okay.
I got spicy right there.
You did the same thing. Yep.
That's, again, this comes back to the thing about learning EVs is when you tap the brakes,
It slows.
it
It
stops.
Yep.
I mean, you're effectively stopping. So that's exciting.
So we are going to make a left-hand turn up here to get to this Supercharger, and it's already starting to paint the lane a little bit blue, and looking for a good opportunity to make that change. Very nice, and it's spaced behind this vehicle.
That was
going
good.
in front of us. Yeah.
That was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed the reporting button up here on the top of the screen that lets us report when something happens, like back there, where the car was wanting to turn. I felt like it wanted to turn instead of the immediate right lane into the center lane, but that was actually one where other traffic was turning next to us, and so that lane was occupied.
Yep.
But it probably would have made it through that just fine, but it definitely felt really odd.
Yeah, that's one of those where, and again, you don't know what the other vehicles might be doing there, because there's a lot of weird merging going on.
Yeah. And the other thing too is traffic around you. Like, what are you telegraphing to them what you're going to do? And if it looks like you're going to hedge over, you create a lot of concern for people that are around you.
I don't think I helped it by stopping.
All right, so here we are at the Eau Claire Supercharger, and I think the car. Let's see how far it takes.
It stopped right there.
It stopped right there.
Yeah,
Okay.
it stopped right at the entrance.
Yep.
And I didn't want to just come to a stop right there.
That's good. I think that's going to wrap up the video for today. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Yeah,
It's fun to have you along on this snowy day for a little full self-driving test here in pre-holiday shopping traffic. All right, so what were your thoughts on the drive, Jason?
Okay, so first of all, thank you, Charlie, for coming with us.
No, thanks
it's
for
fun to
coming out.
have. It's interesting because now we get a third perspective, and this is your first time full self-driving too, right? So for me, way more comfortable this time around than last time, right? Than the very first time I drove. And I think it comes down to a couple things. One is familiarity. It's not the first time I'm doing it. So a lot of the things that I didn't understand how the car was gonna react before, I do now. And so I can anticipate that a little bit better. That helps. We set it in chill mode for my profile, which I don't know if that made a big difference or not. Maybe it didn't, because at times when it needed to, it still did aggressive maneuvers to get in the right position. But just the basic cornering and things like that, even the little roundabout that when we left my neighborhood, which we didn't have we weren't recording at that time, but that was really chill. I mean, almost like, all right, let's go. But anyway, I thought it did a great job. A lot of the traffic areas where you would expect things to be difficult or tricky, it handled really well. Yeah. So
I thought for
much more comfortable driving.
Most of the drive, I was more focused on like talking with you guys.
Right,
That was actual car movement. So But what about you, Charlie?
I think it's certainly the technology is amazing and it works. I mean, we got here and it navigates some tricky areas. It feels like a driver that's probably just like newer to driving almost still, like a little bit hesitant and a little bit more, not like you said, doesn't anticipate quite like a human may.
Right.
And I think that's just as the software gets smarter and smarter, it'll get better and better. But from a practicality standpoint, that's amazing. I mean, to be able to go off of guide paths that's the world as opposed to something like a hard set map, it's amazing it can take the inputs and react so well. Again, different than an airplane. An airplane, you hate to say it, will fly into something, and this will try to do everything it can to not do that. Airplane, definitely autopilot gives you some envelope of a protection,